Hi, welcome back to my channel. It's time for another wrap up. I finished 3 books. Actually, I finished 5 books so far, but I've already talked about 2 books in a previous video. So, the first book I finished was Daddy Long Legs by Webster. That was in the video, and the 5th book that I finished was Botchan by Natsume Sōseki, also in that video. So I won't be talking about those books in this video. I'll be talking about book number 2, number 3, and number 4. So let's talk about book number 2. This is a play by V, formerly known as Eve Ensler. So this is called Necessary Targets. This would be my 3rd book by V. I kind of like reading her stuff. There is something about her writing that just feels kind of personal, and the ones that I've read so far, including this one, have been mostly quick reads. So in a way, the reading experience have been kind of relaxing as well. You know, so it's a combination of relaxing and also personal kind of writing. The first 2 books were mostly about her own personal experience. I think it was the Vagina Monologues and also the Apology. This one is something a little bit different. So in here, we see a kind of narrative in which we follow a psychiatrist, an American psychiatrist who has always been living a more sheltered life. She has been sort of tasked to go to Bosnia in order to help some of the women refugees there because of the Bosnian War that was happening at that time. So the war happened many years ago, sometime in the 90s. So it has been quite a long time from today. And this book was actually published sometime in the early 2000s. Yeah, so this one was actually published in 2001. So it was kind of like close to the time when the war was happening in that time period. I would say I kind of enjoyed this book somewhat, in the sense that it was indeed a quick read. If I'm not mistaken, I actually finished this book within a day, because that was how fast it was, to finish this. The text kind of looks like this, so it's easy to finish this book very quickly. But at the same time, I also have a little bit of I have a little bit of reservation about rating a drama or a play script, because I feel like something like a play, in order for you to kind of see it in its see the narrative, appreciate the narrative in its fuller form, I think it's important to also include as well, watching the performance, because I feel like, the acting, the sounds, the stage, and all of those things contribute to the narrative itself. So that's kind of like what I think a play is, And so I only read this, and I did not experience that other part of this narrative. So I'm not sure if my comments about this book is going to be like I'm not sure if the comment is going to worth anything. But anyway, I'm just gonna comment based on what I've read in here, based on the content of this script. So yeah, it follows this American psychiatrist named J.S. And because J.S. does not have the experience working with war refugees, she kind of partnered with another woman, a younger woman named Melissa, who was also preparing to write her own book about her work. And so they go to Bosnia and they meet with a few Bosnian women who were victims affected by the war that was going on in the country. So they were refugees, and because of that, their lives have been destroyed in various ways. So we have a bunch of characters who have very different personalities that represent these Bosnian women characters. We have a woman who is a doctor, a woman who is like really old, an elderly woman, a young woman with a child, a woman who is who, despite the war, still cares about her her appearance and all that, self-care and all those things. So we got a range of characters representing the Bosnian women. What I kind of enjoyed about it, like I mentioned earlier, it was a quick read, and at the same time, I think there is kind of like a nice presentation of an arc involving the main character JS, the psychiatrist. Like at first, she kind of has this apprehension about possibly not being able to perform at her job because she has never done something like this before. She has never worked with war refugees before, and she's not really sure if she can do that. And she comes from a very sheltered background, and she is not sure if she's able to kind of connect with these women. But well, as the story would promise us, there would be some kind of change happening in this book concerning this character. So yeah, that is something that I kind of appreciate about this book. There are certain things though that I kind of notice about this story. Number one is the main character of this book, also the POV character, I would say, is JS, this American psychiatrist, right? And I suppose in a way it kind of makes sense for an American to be an American psychiatrist to be the main character and have the story centering around the change happening to her upon her contact with these war refugees. I guess in a way, as a POV character, she could sort of become like a channel for audience who are likely not war refugees themselves, who likely do not have the experience of being war refugees. So maybe JS could serve kind of like a channel for these kinds of readers in order to kind of feel and get into the story better. But at the same time, I'm also not particularly sure about really centering the story around this psychiatrist, because while she is the main character and while there is some kind of change happening, because the play is like really short and really quick to to finish, I feel like there isn't a lot of like substantial meat in between that kind of shows us how JS just kind of arrives to that final destination of her character arc. One particular dynamics that I find really interesting in this book is how JS and one Bosnian character named Zlata used to be a doctor, and they kind of have this in common, but at the same time Zlata also has a personality that clashes with JS. And so they have this really interesting dynamics that I think it would have been really nice to see in a deeper way, or I would say more extensively in this story, and kind of use that as like one of the ways in which JS becomes more of a developed person. So I feel like in terms of that, the meat isn't very thick in this book. Now, talking about the meat of this book, we got a bunch of characters representing Bosnian women, and one thing I want to note is that you could certainly feel the passion of the writer in crafting the story. And from the introduction, I also learned that the writer actually interviewed some real-life refugees from Bosnia in order for this play to be better crafted, and you can really feel there is this kind of sincerity going in into this work. But at the same time, while we have a bunch of Bosnian characters in this book, we don't really hear much of their voices, because it's a bit of a missed opportunity, I think, because these characters have such different personalities. They are so different from each other, that it would be really interesting to see their stories much longer, right, in this book. But they just don't have a lot of screen time in the story. So I think that's a bit of a pity. I think it would have been much more interesting, because at the same time, having more of their stories being shown, right, individual stories being shown in the play, that would probably, I don't know, in a way, amplify the voices and also the experience of the Boston women that the author interviewed before. But then again, I only read the script. I'm not sure if I were to kind of watch the performance in front of me with all the things attached to an actual performance, maybe that could actually like enhance the narrative experience. So there's that. I think there's always this kind of shortcoming in when it comes to like reading the script of a play. Anyway, I think it was an interesting read. I would definitely read more by V in the future. So I am going to move on to the next book. I'm gonna pause this video first. Okay, I'm back. The next book I want to talk about is a book written by a Malaysian author. This is called This End of the Rainbow by Adibah Amin. So this book was published sometime in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, first printing 2006. I've heard of this author for quite some time now. Like I think she's quite a prolific author. She has published tons of work, non-fiction mostly, but there are also some fiction. But I feel like she's more known for her non-fiction. So I would probably move on to her non-fiction after this, especially because after reading this book, I was a little bit disappointed. Well, not really a little bit. Kind of disappointed. I did not particularly enjoy this one. But anyway, very briefly, this book is a historical fiction, and it is set in Malaya around 1950s, and it centers around this character, this young woman named Ayu. She just enrolled to University of Malaya, and at that time the campus is still located in Singapore, which today it is known as NUS. So yeah, Ayu is a young woman who kind of she just starts her degree program in university, and at that time Singapore actually is still part of Malaya, right? So this is kind of like pre-Federation of Malaysia, and Malaya at that time was still under the rule of the British. And just one decade before that, right, Malaya has just seen the very brief but kind of brutal occupation of the Japanese as well. So all of these things are alluded in the story. And basically the focus of this book is on Ayu's character growth. As a kind of like as a student who just starts university, and someone who just starts university, things that are very commonly associated with them are stuff like idealism, right, naivete, just kind of learning about the world and stuff like that. And so we kind of have glimpses of those elements in this book, where we kind of learn about Ayu's past, right, and also what Ayu is experiencing at the university, the different kinds of people that she meets at the university. So the combination of all of those things that has happened in the past, and also things that happen to her in the present, all of those things are kind of like leading towards shaping Ayu into becoming the person she is at the end of this novel. And I feel like the what this novel intends to kind of show us about Ayu as a character is that particular change that happens to her towards the end. But it is not really explicitly, or well, not necessarily explicitly, it doesn't have to be explicitly, but it's not really, I would say, suggested at the beginning of this novel. So when I got first, entered this novel, I was a little bit confused about what I should expect from this book, because much of this novel felt very, meandering, which, to be honest, is kind of fine. But there's one thing that I particularly did not sit well with, and I think this is probably just my own personal taste. This book has this tendency to be quite sentimental when it comes to things related to racial relation in Malaya at the time, and this sentimentality is something that I see still going on in contemporary Malaysian works as well. And honestly, this is like part of the reasons why I tend to be slightly more critical towards works written by local authors, because there's this tendency to fall into this trap of sentimentality, this almost rose-tinted view of racial relation, seeing the good sides of things, without really, and I mean really, addressing the core issues. Now, what I did kind of appreciate with this book is that it did try to address the issues that are behind the racial tension between different groups of people in Malaya. But it does so in a way that also feels like it doesn't say much. Like it doesn't try to be a bit braver, if you know what I mean. Though, to be honest, I'm not sure if authors can really be brave, because those things are kind of controversial in my country. So but there is this kind of like desire within me as a reader to see something that is like, really brave. But, as a Malaysian myself, I kind of understand, the lack of, availability of such kinds of materials, right? But yeah, the overly sentimental writing kind of feels grating to me, because it feels like it's trying to be coy and kind of avoids the issues that it really wants to discuss. But I can see that it wants to discuss certain issues, certain political issues. Okay, so another aspect that I think I wasn't really crazy about was how Ayu is kind of framed as a character who was somewhat present, but at the same time she just feels like a really blank character. I don't know why she's the main character. I don't know why. I don't know what is special about her that makes her so central to this novel. What is her purpose? Is she supposed to be a blank canvas that readers can impress themselves on? Or is she supposed to have like something interesting to say? Because I feel like this book does suggest that Ayu has some interesting things to say. Maybe I think it could have been better if this novel had focused more on certain aspects of Ayu's character and really makes this novel kind of linger around that aspect of a character. Maybe her naivete, or maybe her journey towards political awakening, or maybe her growth as a potential writer. I don't know, just kind of pick one or two things that makes Ayu a really interesting character, makes her different from other characters, and just kind of somewhat center the story around that, rather than just kind of makes her a very passive character that just goes through the motions, as time passes by, she just kind of, vibes along. And so yeah, Ayu just doesn't feel very compelling to me as a protagonist. Anyway, this one was unfortunately not something that I enjoyed. A bit of a dud for me. But I think I'll probably try Adibah Amin's other works. More famous works, I would say. She got at least 2 books of non-fiction that I know of, so I'll probably try that in the future. Anyway, moving on to the third book. The third book I don't have with me. It is by Fernanda Melchor. It's called Paradais. It is a short novel translated from Spanish to English by Sophie Hughes. Fernanda Melchor is a Mexican writer. I have read Hurricane Season before, and I really, really, really enjoyed that. I gave that one 5 stars. If you have not read that, go and read it. It's awesome. Anyway, I read this book at the library, so that's why I don't have it. And I would say it was a nice novel. It's a very straightforward novel, I would say. Basically, it's about 2 characters. One is a privileged young man named Franco Andrade, and he lives in this neighborhood, this affluent neighborhood, with his rich family. And his main thing is that he really lusts after his neighbor, who is this older woman, already married with 2 children, and they also live in this big house as well. And Franco, he he is described physically as someone who is really unattractive. And he doesn't seem to be someone who does well in life as well. He's kind of lazy. He doesn't really have a job, and all he does all day would be masturbating with the image of this, either with pornography or with the image of this neighbor that he's really thirsting after. So that's one character. Another character is a young man who works at this affluent neighborhood as a guard and gardener, I think. His name is Polo, and he comes from a really poor family, and they live in the slums. The mom is like really controlling, and at the same time there are also some problems with their family as well, aside from money issues. And all Polo really wants is to just have a better life, but he just does not have the means to achieve this because his family is just too poor. And the fact that he's working at this like really rich neighborhood kind of feels like it's rubbing salt on the wound for him, because he has to kind of face all this affluence every day, and there is something about that that just kind of shatters him. But Polo and Franco, they end up meeting each other, and they sort of strike a relationship, a kind of like a partnership, not so much a friendship because there's no sincerity in the relationship. It is super imbalanced. But they decide on a plan in which both of them could probably gain something. But this plan is also something that is highly criminal, highly awful. What plan is that? You'll just have to read this book. I feel like this novel is a very straightforward story about class struggle. So basically just kind of like the conflict between lower class people and upper class people. So at its core, I feel like the idea is kind of basic, which is fine. I feel like what really props up this book to me is the writing in here. Like, I could really see the kind of writing, the kind of voice that this author has also in Hurricane Season. This tendency to write the letters in such a way that feels a little bit disorienting, and the sentences tend to be really long, and the words that are used tend to be like really visceral. Like when it comes to describing things, there is a lot of focus on things that are like disgusting, repulsive, ugly, violent, graphic, sexual. If you're a squeamish kind of person, maybe this book is not going to work for you, because there are things like violence and really graphic sexual scenes that are involved in here. And the way that Melchor writes those things just really, like, it's really hitting you with all those imageries, right? So it can become really vivid. But I feel like there is this really strong authorial voice that I kind of enjoy in this book as well. But as a whole, I can't help but to kind of compare it with Hurricane Season, because I feel like Hurricane Season feels more of a layered novel. It is a novel that mixes misogyny with masculinity, with poverty, class issues, all those things. This one, Paradais, also has a bit of that, but it focuses mostly on class struggles, and I would say it's a little bit thinner in terms of its themes compared to Hurricane Season. So probably that's why I enjoyed this one a little bit less. Another thing that I just kind of want to mention about this book is that the character of Franco, he is really described as repulsive. Like, the author is really trying to tell us that Franco is just as repulsive as a human can be. Like, he's delusional physically, he is super unattractive, so many words are being used to describe his physical body in a way that makes you feel repulsed by the image of this character. To the extent that I feel like it's a little bit exaggerated and a little bit campy. So I suppose the effect that, this description the author wants to provide is to kind of amplify the fact that Franco is such and such kind of a person, right? But I feel like it's a little bit overdone, that I just don't really believe that Franco is such and such kind of person, because it's a little bit too much, I think. It kind of goes, jumps the border towards camp, and now I just find it doesn't feel really serious anymore. So that's a little bit of my tiny issue with the portrayal of the main character in this book. But I think overall, I still think that it is a nice novel, and I would definitely read more by Fernanda Melchor in the future. So those are all of the books that I have read, and just a little bit of what I'm currently reading right now. I'm reading this one by Caitlyn Doughty. This is non-fiction. Ooh, non-fiction, eh? This is called From Here to Eternity, Traveling the World to Find the Good Death. I'm kind of familiar with this author because I used to binge watch her videos on YouTube a few years ago. And nowadays the videos just roll out a bit at a slower pace, so not so much binging, not so much content to binge. So other than that book, I have also just kind of started a new book. Even though I have plenty of books on my currently reading shelf, but I am just starting new books, like liberally. So this one is translated fiction by Alexander Lernet-Holenia. This is called Mars in Aries. I read Bagge last year, but I don't think I've had the opportunity to talk about it in my channel, so I'll probably talk about that while I'm reading this book. Because I really enjoyed Bagge. So hopefully Mars in Aries is going to be quite enjoyable as well. This one is slightly longer, but it seems like it has a bit of that kind of in between reality kind of a vibe that Bagge has. So hopefully it's going to be a nice one. I don't know what else I'm currently reading. So basically these two are the books that I'm kind of focusing at the moment. Oh, actually there is another book that I'm currently reading. The Country of the Pointed Furs by Sarah Orne Jewett. I don't have the book with me right now. I don't know where it is. It's kind of scattered. It's probably somewhere in my house though. So that book is a short book, like really short, but I am really taking my time with it because I feel like the language is something that somehow the version of me who is like appearing in front of you right now is not really able to take in right now, because I don't know why, probably my brain is just kind of frozen at the moment. So the language used in that book, even though it's not that difficult, but it's kind of different, because that book was actually written before the 1900s. It was published sometime in the late 19th century, so it's quite like it was already more than 100 years ago. And English is not my second language. Oh, no, English is not my first language. See, I just demonstrated the fact that English is not my first language with that mistake. So anyway, that's all I'm gonna share with you today. I'll see you again in a different video. Thank you for listening. Let me know what you're currently reading at the moment, And also, if you have read any of these books that I've just mentioned, I would love to hear your experience, what you think about these books. Did you love them? Did you like them? Were you indifferent about them? Did you dislike them, or did you hate them? I love to hear someone saying that they hate something. I don't know if that applies to you, but I love to hear some good rants as well. Spread the negativity. But anyway, thank you so much for staying all the way until this point of this video. I know it's like really long, but I think at this point you probably know what to expect in this channel anyway. So bye bye.